recording. So the recording is going to begin now. I will post this to YouTube on the IAAP channel that I created within my own YouTube channel account. So it'll be up later this week. And I will have handouts to Karen again later this week. So if there aren't any questions, we're going to get started. Hopefully everyone is here to learn a little bit more about Excel. If not, you're in the wrong place. And I will let you go watch the Cubs game. So anyway, one of the things that I was asked to do is come up with something creative that folks may or may not know about, and some of the tips and tricks behind the scenes stuff. So I'm also somewhat of a tech junkie, and I like figuring out how things work and using those features of software that a lot of people don't commonly use. So for some of you, you may know all of these features, and it will not hurt my feelings at all if you say, I already know that and I can teach you something. I'm hoping at the end of the session, everybody will walk away with at least one or two tricks, things that they didn't know before they joined us. So that is my goal for this presentation. So what we're going to cover today, how to use the Backstage view, which is actually just a refresher of what we did last month in terms of the info section in Word, how to use autofill and flash fill, how to use charts by using the recommended charts tool and chart tools themselves, how to use quick analysis, and if time permits and my computer behaves, just a quick look at how to use quick reports with Power View. So first off, how many of you are familiar with flash fill and autofill in Excel?
I am.
Okay, I heard one person. There is a chat feature available that we can use in this session as well. So if you want to just chat me away, we can do that. And if not, we'll just continue on. So I am a fanatic about flash fill and autofill, but we'll start out with just a reminder on the Backstage view. So Backstage view is the back end of any of your documents. Again, this is where all of the detailed information about the properties of your document, dates that are important for the document's history, co-authors and authors of the document, related documents are all found. But for several of the features we're going to work at today, the options link is going to play a very big role. So when you're looking at the Backstage options, that's everything in this green bar. But in my mind, it really focuses on these last two, account and options. And we're going to play with options on a couple of occasions as we progress through this presentation. So to use the Backstage view, if you're in your Excel document, and I'm going to apologize because I'm going to be flipping back and forth between items, you go to File, and then you can click on any one of these. So I'm sure most of us have used this at some point. Using Open, it will let you see all of the recent Excel documents that you've worked with. If you're in Word, it'll be recent Word documents. Of course, you have your Save or Save As feature. This is also a great way if you can't remember where you save something to look up the address or Open. Save as PDF if you've got that plugin available. Print. Share allows you to invite people to share your document if you've got it stored on OneDrive. Or, of course, you can email it, present it online, or if you're using another Microsoft-related process, in our case, we use Skype for Business, I could also send the document through our internal Skype. Export allows you to export it as a PDF or other file types. Of course, close the document lets you close it out. Account is just account information. This is set up by default for my organization. Most companies do the same. And then options are where I can go in and make some changes in terms of advanced features, customizing my ribbon. We looked at the Trust Center in depth last time. So this is where you can go in and do a lot of the back-end manipulation. Any questions about the Backstage view? Because this is really just a summary and a recap. I use it quite a bit to see of my team who's worked on a particular document. So the author is the original creator, and then I can also look to see who modified it. So if somebody's made a change, let's say to a spreadsheet or to a training document, I can go back directly to the person who made that modification and follow up and say, this doesn't quite make sense, or what were you thinking here, or this was a great job, thanks for doing that. And the Backstage view it makes my life simple and quick and easy. So the next thing we're going to take a look at is advanced fill, autofill, flash fill. So if you've ever done something in Excel and you've dragged down a column and the numbers started doing weird things, multiplying themselves, repeating themselves, you probably accidentally used that autofill or flash fill feature. So I'm going to show you a couple of different things that you can use using that feature. Some of these you might be familiar with, and some of these you might not have seen before. So before I get started with the fill, is there anybody that has any questions about how to use any of the basic Excel features? Okay, great. Somebody didn't know what the Backstage view was called, so that's the technical term. I usually just say that place you go to do things. Autofill started with Excel in about as early as 2003, and it still is current today. You can use it to create a variety of easy copy-paste. You can also use it to create custom lists, which I find really, really helpful. You can fine-tune how your data is entered. And then in Flash Fill, it also offers you some additional opportunities to do some data analysis. So we're going to start out with some of the things that you can do with just very simple fill. So I've got an example here. So I did sample 1, picture 2. I'm creating a spreadsheet to document resources that we use in our training materials. So if I click on that, oops, and I highlight it, so we have a white box and a gray box, and I'm sure you all can see my finger pointing. If you look at these squares, at the very bottom right corner, you'll notice that there's a darkened square. So if I click and hold that, it will now repeat my pattern. So that's one of the things that autofill can do. So it notices that I did sample 1, picture 2. I highlighted those 2 items and said, I want you to repeat this. So it carried on the pattern. So now I have on row 3, sample 2, picture 3 on row 4, sample 3 on row 5, picture 4. And I could do that for an entire spreadsheet if I wanted. Another thing that you can do is if you have a column that you have to duplicate the same word for frequently. I'm working on a big project right now where we have to document when training is available and if the particular lesson is available to be used by our technicians. So I want to say yes for all of these items. I have my word yes. I'm going to just delete these. I come up here to my first yes. Again, I click on that heavy square in the bottom right corner. I drag it down, and I can fill all of my rows with yes. So I don't have to copy paste. I don't have to type the word over and over again. Another thing that you can do is if you've got a numerical pattern that's going, autofill will automatically recognize that. So let's say I highlight 4, 5, 6, 7, click in my square, drag down, and it carries on the pattern. So if you're looking for things that have a specific pattern, this is a quick and easy way to fill in those numbers. Sometimes it can get frustrating though if you don't want it to fill the numbers for you. Another thing that's similar to this is if there is a pattern between the numbers. So let's say 2, 4, 6. What's the pattern between 2 and 4 and 6 in each of those rows? You can unmute yourself or type it in chat. Yes, that's true. You can also double click the square and it'll fill down. Okay, it's increased by 2. So that's another one. So I've got my 2, 4, 6 pattern and I can drag down and it will carry on that pattern as long as I haven't deviated from the pattern. So that is just some of the very simple fill options that you can use with autofill, and that's even in very, very old versions of Excel. So you can also do some additional advanced things. So for example, I'm building a list. Okay, so we've got Bob Denver, we have Jim, Shorts, and I want to assign them an employee ID number. So again, it's that same feature. I just drag it. Because I didn't grab the pattern, Excel thinks I want to use 4 for everybody. So I'm like, no, that's not it. They need a unique identifier. So I undo it. I come over here to 3 and 4, drag down, and it automatically assigns the ID within the next numerical order. So again, it's a fairly simple feature, but can be very, very useful. So along those lines, we have some autofill options. So as Excel realizes that I'm using these features, it gives me another autofill option button. I click on that, And it says, oh, looks like you're trying to do a series. Do you want me to automatically do a series? Do you want to use flash fill? Do you want to copy some cells? So it saves me a lot of extra effort in terms of manipulating my data. Anybody have any trips? I cannot talk tonight. Tips or tricks for using some of these fill features? Things that you'd like to share with the group. Okay, so fill series, that's where I did, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it's just a series of numbers or words that fall into a numerical or alpha pattern. That way I don't have to remember, okay, what is flash fill? We'll go to flash fill in just a minute. That is a way to do an analysis on your information. And that was introduced in Microsoft 2013. So I'll come up to flash fill momentarily. Yes, becoming good friends with Excel. Sure, so demonstrate the fill series. So let's see, 2, 3, 4. So this is my fill series here. And so it's saying, okay, you've got these numbers going down in an ordered list, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way through 18. Oh, you must want to do a fill series. There are a couple of tricks to getting it to fill out the months. It's a little bit quirky. I only have about a 50-50 chance of having that happen. So when I select the fill series, it's just saying, yes, we know that you want to continue doing this. If I do fill formatting, it erases everything I've done because after I started the series, these cells were empty. So now if I go back to fill series, it fills those numbers back in. Another fun thing that you can do, or a very helpful thing you can do, is you can create lists. So one of the features that people often forget that Excel offers is the ability to do formulas and manipulate data. A lot of times we just look at it as, okay, I'm just going to enter numbers into a box. I'm using an alpha list right now because I want to show you the really, to me, very cool features here. Let's say that there is a list of people that you interact with on a daily basis, and you have to include those in a report. Or in my case, there are training titles that I use on a regular basis, and I have to provide reports to various people. So I'm going to call it iPhone, and that's going to be my list name. And so then I'm going to go iOS 3, which is the first one, iOS 4. Notice it's already thinking it knows me better than I am. So I'm going to come over here, select it, and I automatically take it all the way through iOS 10. What I'm going to do now is make this a list that I can use frequently. So I've highlighted my list. I'm going to come to File, Options, then I'm going to go to Advanced. I'm going to scroll all the way down to General, and there's this thing here called Edit Custom Lists. So I'm going to click Edit Custom Lists. If you're used to working with formulas, this should look very familiar to you. So it's taking the cells ranging from D1 through D9, which is where I put my list. I'm going to import it, and now I have my list entries, iPhone, and then every possible iPhone. I click OK. I click OK again. I come over here. I type in iPhone. I grab my little fill bar. I drag down. It reads my list and it automatically populates. So now I can go, okay, first phone, and then I can put in whatever data I need. So to me, custom lists is just an amazing feature that is a hidden gem in Excel that people very rarely use or know about. So my question to you is, how many of you have used the custom list feature in Excel? All right, excellent. So everybody's gotten at least one tip today then. So the next thing we want to do is take a look at, you can also do a repeating series. I'm going to go back to my advanced fill page here. So let's say that you're writing multiple choice questions. So Normally it might be A, B, C, D, A, B, C, D, but just for fun, I'm going to go yes, no, true, false. And I'm going to come back over here and line this up so everything lines up the same. So now I have a repeating series. I'm going to select these, and then I can repeat this series again. So now for the learning management system that we use, we have to put it in a specific format. I can do my answers, and then I can put my questions over here to the left of it, import it into my learning management system, and I save myself a lot of typing time. Any questions about that before I move on to some of the other new things? Okay. If you have a question, feel free to type into the chat box. So we've done custom list. We've done some of the fun fill things. So now we're going to come over here to flash fill. Flash fill allows you to do a lot of fast customization, for example. And as we move into some of the data analysis piece in just a couple of minutes, we'll also look at how to use the fill feature to analyze our information. In this particular instance, I have a series of names. So I'm going to come over here, highlight Roger Rabbit, whose ID number is 13. And if you notice now, instead of the very boring blue and gray box, yes, Heather, the handout will have the tips for all this as well. This little multicolored box allows me to flash fill. And so I am working with text. So I'm going to say text contains. So I'm saying text contains rabbit. I clearly don't know how to spell. And I'm going to say green fill with dark green text. So now anytime I type the word rabbit, I can go back and highlight it in my colors. I can come over here. I can use my normal formatting tools, but because I've started building a table, I can use this. I can also create a color scale. So I want this to be dark. I can also clear out all my formatting. So that is just one of the ways that you can use the flash fill. Really, really helpful when you're dealing with large amounts of data and you want to pull out specific numbers or highlight some certain numbers or names of people in a mailing list. So we can do some additional fill fun. So I've got colors and days. I come over here and I can look for duplicate values. So let's say I type the word gray twice. I'm going to come over here and look for duplicate values, and it's going to highlight for me every time I've got a duplicated value. So again, this might be I'm looking for a mistake. It might be that I'm looking for everything that happened on Monday. It depends on the project that I'm working on, but that is a quick and easy way of searching for information without making your brain go numb, which typically happens to me on Mondays. I can also look for unique values. So if this was a string of numbers, everything had a lot, yes, an excellent way to dedupe mailing lists. It just makes things quicker and faster. I can also search for things that are equal to. And again, in this particular example, I haven't put in a lot of data, but you can search for a variety of things. Charts. It will even recommend the kinds of charts that you can use based on the data available. And you can hover over it, and it will show you what some of the charts would look like. Totals would be used if you had data. So we're going to take a look at that in just a couple of minutes. And of course, you can also build tables. We're not going to get into pivot tables in today's session, but if Karen is willing and we want to do something in 2016, we can do a whole session just in pivot tables. And then spark lines are mini graphs that you can put into a Word document or a file, something to keep people's interest. Any questions about the fill feature? What I'd like to do is encourage everyone to go and play with it in your spare time. I think you would be amazed at the things that it can do for you. Yes, on pivot tables in early 2017. All right. If there's enough interest, I'm happy to do a session on pivot tables for the group. Okay. So next thing, quick analysis. So here I said, okay, let's just look at the days of the week and the amount of time spent on phones. I work in a call center, so one of our very big metrics that we look at is how much time we spend on the phone. As a customer, when I call in for help with my phone, with my insurance, you know, if I've got a problem with an order, something I bought at Target or Amazon, I don't want to be on the phone for a long period of time. I want it to be done quickly. So we take a look at how much time our customers spend on the phone. I can come over here, click on my fast fill, and I've got all this regular formatting, but I can also come back to my charts and say, so here are some recommended charts based on the data that I have. Here's what they would look like. And so I'm going to start off with a pie chart. So we're going to pull this pie chart. And again, this is based on our recommended fill. I can come in and I can filter. So if I just wanted to see what it looked like on Monday, I could do that. I could select all. I can rename things if necessary. I can also come back and change the way this looks. So here I've changed the presentation. Here I wanted it to be much more visual, so I want to see the percentages. It's like, Wednesday seems to be a real outlier here. For some reason, something must have happened because we spent way too much time comparatively on the phone on Wednesday than we did the rest of the week. So this is one of the ways that I can manipulate the data. I can also manipulate my chart elements just like you can in a regular chart. So I can change my chart name. I can change my labels. I can work with my legend by coming over here. Where do I want it? So let's say I want my legend on the bottom. Or there's more options. So, you know, here I don't have a whole lot of places to put them, but let's say I wanted to put it on the left. So depending on the document that you're working with and depending on what you're trying to build, this quick fill recommended charts really gives you a lot more flexibility to do things faster and on the fly. Then I can also use my regular chart tools. So I can still come in and say, okay, I want to change my shape outline. I'd like to change my shape fill. I can still go in and click my design bar and say, you know what? Let's switch this. So this is kind of a silly graph because now I've only got one day. Now I want to go back. But sometimes I just want to take a look at it. I can also come over here and change my colors. So we've got different color palettes. So let's say I want to go all green. I can change my chart that way. And here I have like 150 million options for how to present my data. But I can also come here and change my chart type. So once I've done that recommended charts, I can look at it and go, you know, after all that, maybe pie chart really wasn't what I wanted. Let's take a look at columns instead. Well, now I don't like the black on green, so I can come back and change my colors again. The only downside is that once you start playing with these features, it becomes very easy to get sucked into the making it look pretty, and sometimes we forget how to do the other things. But if you notice here, we've also got a few more features than we had before. So I could put in alt text, and some of you that were on the call last month, we talked about alt text and tagging. So I can put in alt text and tag my chart so that people get a definition of it. I can take a look at the properties. So do I want to move and size it with my cells? Do I want to move it, but I don't want to size it? Do I just want to print it? Do I want to lock my graph or my chart? And then I can also determine the size and the width and whether or not I'm going to lock the aspect ratio. So this gives me an opportunity to do a lot more in terms of adding it to other documents. I'm a color fanatic too. This little chart filter here, again, if I had more data, if this wasn't just 8 rows of data, I could go in and say, okay, I want to do an analysis of just Wednesdays. So I can click Wednesday and I can take a look over time and see everything that just happened on Wednesday. So that pops out. Any questions about those features? Oh, okay, aspect ratio. The aspect ratio is how the picture sizes. So if you look at each of the corners here, there is this extra large white square, and they're also in the middle. If I drag the chart from the corners, then it keeps everything at the same height and width ratio, whereas if I drag from the middles, I get short and dumpy. and it looks kind of strange. So maintaining that aspect ratio is, no matter how you size it, it's going to keep everything looking relative. Generally, I tell people when they're working with images to always size from the corners, and that way it keeps things looking a little bit more normal, for lack of a better term. Did that help? Excellent. All right, so we're going to come back over here and we're going to highlight this again. We've got my little chart option over here. We can also do a spark line. And so this gives me just a teeny tiny graph. Not very useful here because, again, I don't have a lot of data. But imagine that I had 3 weeks worth of data. I could then have this little spark line that shows me how things look comparatively. So I'm going to hit undo here, go back over here. I can also create another table. So now I've built my table. I've got my chart. I came over here, used my fun little fill button. Now I've got a chart where I can do that same data manipulation without the graph. So if I come over here and just delete, I'm going to click the delete key on my keyboard. My table still remains. So now I can sit here and say, you know what? I'm going to do this again. I only want to see the data for Wednesday. And that brings that up for me because that's what I'm filtering by. I can come back and say select all. And okay. Now I want to just sort by my lowest number. Or I want to sort largest to smallest. So I sorted largest to smallest within my table. And it just easily and quickly manipulates the data. So the question is, what do you do with spark lines? And spark lines is brand new in 2013 Excel. You can use spark lines in terms of you want a quick visual as part of a report. So instead of having a very large graph or table, you can do the little spark line. What's the little mark at the bottom right of the last data on the, oh, okay. So that little mark there is to show that I've sorted things. And that's the active column. So now I can go smallest to largest, or I can come back and I can clear my filters out. I can also sort by color. So now I've completely whacked this out. And for some reason, my clear filter is grayed out. But I also can do number filters. So I don't know what I've done to myself right now. I apologize. But I can also do my number filters. For example, between is greater than or equal to 1, 2, 3, 4, and 2, 4, 8, 6. So it would only pull that data for me. And then these are table boundaries. So it's saying that I can't resize it because I've got something hidden. So if I come back, clear the filter, there you go. That little thing at the bottom, because I had it locked, I can go in and change the boundaries of my table. So if I wanted to add additional data, I just click and drag that, and I can quickly resize my table within the document. So I'm going to just take a break for a second so that I can do a quick attendance update and let you mull over if you have any questions before we move on to the next section. Yes, Excel is a really, really amazing tool. And there are so many capabilities behind it that people just don't even know about. And the thing is, some of these features will make your life so much easier because it's just saving all kinds of time. I love Excel the way others love PowerPoint. All right. Well, next month we're having a PowerPoint lesson, so we can compare Excel to PowerPoint if you like. All right, I've just got to grab one more name here and then we can move on. Yes, virtual meetings are really great. And I love the fact that we are able to record sessions as well so that everyone will have practical handouts and tips. And then you can always go back to it and, you know, just look at what you learned in practice. So again, this was, hi everyone, this is my boss saying goodnight. So again, just another example of how to manipulate and use that data. I was also able to come in here. I created my table, but I also had the ability to do a sum. So you can quickly and easily sum your information. And so here I'm starting a pivot chart, which again, we're not doing until 2017. Boss says goodnight. She brought candy for everyone, but I guess I have to eat it. So here we have the basics of doing a pivot table as well. So we can do that in 2017 if everyone is interested. Looking at, you can do filters, you can build legends, you can sort by any number of values. You can determine what you want to filter, how you want to place the information, and you can even update your chart. If I click on my plus sign over here, it's currently only showing the axis, the chart title, and the grid lines, but I can look for a trend line. So again, I'm analyzing the data for how much time that we are spending. Thank you, Connie, I am feeling better. Analyzing the data for how much time our technicians are spending on the phone with the customers, so I can create a trend line. And so that trend line will say, okay, anything below the line is good, anything above the line is bad, because our metric is, you know, it must be at 340 seconds or less, which is unrealistic, but you know, just to kind of give you an idea of some of the different things that you can do. I can take my trend line away. Here I can show my data table. So let's say I wanted to just take a screenshot of my graph showing that data table. I'm presenting that to my boss without having to send the entire Excel. I can say, hey, here's what the data table looks like. Here's where the data came from. So the question is, can you manipulate the trend line? Yes, see how there's these little teeny circles over here? I just can't get myself to grab it right now, but I can manipulate my start and end points. So I can take my grid lines off if I want. I like to have the grid lines, especially when I'm dealing with a lot of data. I'm going to turn that trend line off again, and then error bar. So again, I have a very small amount of data that I'm demonstrating, but you can also look at the statistics and say, okay, this is an error of plus or minus, you know, X number of points. I can also change my data labels so that they move here. So it's much easier to read. If I've got lots and lots of information, I can say, hey, show my data label above each of the bars in the bar chart. I can come down here as well and look at my filters. I would suggest, you know, build yourself a spreadsheet with a little bit more data and just go in and play with everything. See how you can manipulate it to meet your needs. And then if I click on the little paintbrush, just like we saw earlier, I can play around with my chart styles. Maybe I need thicker bars and I want a nice gray background. I'm doing a formal presentation. Maybe I like this black. And I still have, because I'm now playing in pivot tools, we can have, you know, even more details. So pivot tables 2017. Personally, I like to have my chart in a separate worksheet. I know a lot of my coworkers like to put the charts in the same worksheet. For me, I just find it less distracting to have it separate. And what about the rest of the group? Do you guys, ladies, prefer to have your charts in a separate spreadsheet or in the same worksheet? Okay, separate, separate, separate. Good to know that I am on point. So was this helpful just to kind of give you an entry-level feel to what you can do not only with flash fill and autofill, but also with some of the quick analysis? Because I, you know, didn't follow script. So we actually went straight to quick analysis without me showing you the slide for that. So we've actually covered everything that I had set out to cover today. Using the quick analysis, using the fill, using the different types of graphs, applying styles. Even in my notes, I say create pivot tables. This is for another day. Conditional formatting, we looked at that as well. Quick reports, this is not available in all versions of Office 2013. And what I've found is that a lot of businesses have turned off quick report option with the Power View because it actually goes out to an external site and pulls in data. So I didn't spend a whole lot of time going through that, but I did want to just call it out in case you saw it where you work. So if I come over here to insert, right now Power View is grayed out because it's not applicable to the particular chart that I'm working on. But if I come over here, again, I have my phone time data. I can click on Power View. I can create a Power View sheet. I click OK. Now I've already gone through the install process, and it allows me to build kind of like a high-level presentation of the data without dealing with the separate worksheet pages. A couple of things to just quickly point out. Yeah, Power View is it's a new feature in 2013, and even asking some of my project managers here who like live and breathe Excel 24/7, most of them haven't used it either. I just wanted to point it out for folks that may have run across it and went, oh, what's that button? So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to get out of Power View and I'm going to go back to a regular sheet. I come to File, Options, and Advanced once again. If for some reason your flash fill is not turned on, if you go to Advanced Options, Editing Options, you have Enable Autocomplete for cell values, and then immediately below that, Automatically Flash Fill. So this is where you can turn that feature on and off. You might also find that you want to turn it off on one spreadsheet for a specific project and then turn it back on for another project. One thing to keep in mind, Automatically Flash Fill is dependent on autocomplete. So if you deselect autocomplete, you do not have the ability to turn on Flash Fill. You have to have that. I can turn off Flash Fill, however, if I have autocomplete turned on. So that's one of the many, many hidden features that you have back here. We've got copy and paste, printing, of course. This is another section that if you really start playing with charts, you also have the ability to turn on some different data points and different information. So again, if you go into advanced, these are the default settings, but you may want to go in and make some customizations for yourself. Same thing with display. Options. You can also change your grid line color if you want. So let's say you want to have your grid lines as red. It turned all my grid lines red automatically. So the question is, anything that is in the Options tab, it is referred to as Backstage. In Microsoft parlance, yes. Most people just say, go to Info or go to the Options tab, at least the ones that I work with, but the technical term is Backstage. So I'm going to come back over here, go back to my advanced. I really have to remember to turn off the grid lines from red before I log out of this session, because otherwise I will come in tomorrow morning and go, what the heck have I done? So I'm going to just put it back to the default. How do you get Power View? One moment. I turned mine on, so I will walk you through the steps. So if you're in Office 2013, and then you have Excel 2013, you should be able to click on Power View and start it. If not, you're going to have to enable it in your back end. And if you like, I can include that information on that slide. So my Power View was already turned on and I still had to enable it to actively work, but I'll include some notes on the Power View slide so that you guys can play with that. And then again, just all kinds of really important features. The one I wanted to point out once again is edit the custom list so that you can quickly build lists. And I'm trying to figure out exactly where I got my Power View from because it was turned on already. So just give me one moment. Do you have SharePoint where you're working? Because it also ties into SharePoint. Okay, let's see. My chat all of a sudden is blowing up. Okay, so Power View does work with SharePoint. And let's see, I will include instructions in the PowerPoint that I send to Karen. And another example of how to use Quick Fill. Sure. And how do you get to text or background to change colors when you type a word? Okay, so let me log out of this really quickly. And let me go back to my Flash Fill. So another way to use Quick Fill, I want to do a chain of numbers. So let's say I'm doing ID numbers for folks. So I'm going to just name the column IDs, and it's 2, 3, 4, and then the next number in the sequence is 2, 3, 5. So if I click here and I click here, I can do that. If I had a series of addresses and they were all in the same zip code, that would be another way to do Power Fill. Another thing is, okay, CBT, computer-based training. So let's say that these are all ID numbers for computer-based trainings. Again, I can just drag this down and copy that over. You can also do some really funky things using horizontal and vertical autofills. If you'd like, I can include that in the handout as well, because that takes a little bit more practice, and I'm somewhat iffy on how effective I am, so I want to make sure I get it right. Let's see, go back to the question on how to change the colors when you type a word. So here we've got Wilma Rubble, who really is not Wilma. I highlight the words that I'm interested in. I get this little the Flash Fill box. I click on that. Then I do text contains. And let's say text contains the word rubble. And then I have a drop-down box of what I want. I can do even custom formatting. So if it contains the word rubble, I want it to be blue. I click OK. And now I have filled the word rubble with blue. Was that helpful? VLOOKUP and HLOOKUP I had not planned to do today. I can incorporate that if the group is interested when we do the pivot tables. Or I can talk to Karen, and instead of doing cool tech stuff for December, we could focus on pivot tables and lookups if you'd rather do that. Correct. It didn't turn blue because I spelled it different. So if I had spelled everything the same, then they would turn up the same. So let's say we look at pumpkin over here. And text contains pumpkin. And I'm going to say custom format. And we're going to call it yellow. Because pumpkin was spelled the same way, pumpkin turned yellow. But because rubble and rubble were not spelled the same, they were different. So was this session helpful for everyone? So next month, it's fun with PowerPoint. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to stop the recording and just open it up for any kind of audio Q&A or any other type of questions and answers that you might have.